I will confess, when I have a question on a moral, ethical, even practical, political kind of issue, and I don't have a strong opinion about it, even if I do, but I'm questioning my opinion, I will just figure out what St. Thomas Aquinas said about it. I will go to one of the early search engines known as the Summa Theologiae. There's this, great theologian who wrote down the answer to pretty much every question, and I'll look it up, and 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, if I disagree with St. Thomas, I'm probably just going to change my view and go with his. Now, at least in that case, I'm doing that very intentionally. I'm saying, I trust this guy, I trust his intellectual and spiritual formation, and I think he's going to be more correct than some, Joe Blow on the street. I guess every day I do the same thing to Google, except it's totally unwitting. When I go to the Summa Theologiae, there's no pretense of neutrality or some, objective standard beyond the objective standard that I guess St. Thomas and I would agree on, God and religion. With Google, there is. There's no person that you're seeing. And then what's very scary is, as you point out, there might not even be some senior engineer there who's trying to. It's just like some kind of ghostly entity in the in the algorithm that's pushing me without any human even being aware of it.
And people, as a result, because they can't see the human element, they're very trusting of what Google shows them. So let me tell you another finding in our experiments over the years that completely shocked me when we first found this. In the first big national study we did using Google search, so we had more than 2,000 people in all 50 states, there were so many people in the study that there were a few who could see the bias. So generally people cannot see bias in search results. I mean, how could you really? You'd have to, click on all the links and compare the web pages.
Right.
And you'd have to rate the web pages and so on. Now, we can do that with computers, but people don't do that. So you can't really see the bias. But in that first national study we did, there were so many people in it that we actually had a small group, about 100, of people who said, I think that you're showing me biased search results, which we were. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, that's cool. Apparently some people sometimes can see it. Guess what? Their opinions shifted even farther in the direction of the bias than people who could not see the bias.
How do you account for that?
It's what you just said. It's that trust. They're saying to themselves, well, the algorithm is actually preferring this candidate, and the algorithm is really smart. This must be the best candidate.
I'm aware of the bias, but who am I to question the algorithm?
But think how creepy that is, because it means that awareness of the bias doesn't protect you from the bias. If anything, it makes you more vulnerable.
So obviously you can see the practical effects of this for elections. Where else? Meaning, what does Google have an interest in this? Do they really care if you prefer, I don't know, Chevys to Fords or something? And if Google does not have a conscious interest in it, then what's the point? I mean, then it's all just kind of happening beyond human control.
I'm really, I struggle with a lot of these issues. Even the very first experiment we ever ran, I thought that biased search results could shift people's voting preferences by 2 or 3%. That was my guess. Yeah. First experiment we ever ran was not with college sophomores, it was with a representative sample of voters. And we got a shift of, I think, 43%, which I thought was a mistake. I'm a researcher, I'm not perfect.
Sure.
We make mistakes. I did not believe that number at all. So we ran it again. Oh, I have an NPR story I can tell you that fits in perfectly right here. In fact, I'm just going to squeeze it in. Okay, at this moment in time, only my new friends, whom I call my right-wing conservative nutcase friends.
Because you've been a liberal your whole life, basically.
Yeah. So I tell this to their face, and they laugh. They think it's funny because they think I'm just kidding. But anyway, NPR called me. So this was maybe 1.5 years, 2 years ago. I was already seen somehow or other as a right-wing nutcase myself. I don't have a conservative bone in my body, but the point is, NPR calls me. I said, wow, yes, mainstream. They're talking to me again. And I mean, I used to write for all these places. I was editor-in-chief of Psychology Today, which is mainstream, left-wing. But they stopped talking to me after I testified before Congress in 2019. So anyway, here's NPR. So NPR sends a crew to my house. They do all the setup, which is, a big deal, and then there's the host and whatever. So they finally start, just like you and I did a little while ago. And this host starts out by saying, so, Dr. Epstein, I know that in one of the very first experiments you ever conducted on Google, you got some enormous shift, something like 43% shift due to the bias you thought in Google search results. And isn't that a bit hard to believe? So of course I'm realizing now, okay, they didn't come here to learn about my work. They came here to make fun of me.
And discredit you.
This is a hit piece.
Yeah.
So I replied, hard to believe? I said, no, absolutely not. In fact, it was completely unbelievable. I said, you're understating the nature of the problem. It was completely unbelievable. I said, and that happens all the time in science. You find things that just don't make any sense. You figure, I made a mistake somewhere, so you repeat it. So we repeated the experiment with another group of representative voters, and this time we got a shift of 66%. The poor guy, I felt so bad for him because I could just see his face drop. He was thinking, oh no, we're not going to get our hit piece here.
Right.
And so he did the whole interview, and then they all left, and they never aired the interview.
Of course.
They never aired it.
Of course. They didn't get what they came for.
But what I'm trying to tell you is that I'm very skeptical about my work. I'm very skeptical about all these things I say. I'm skeptical about our discoveries. But we do what good scientists do. We replicate. We do variations. We talk to other teams, and other teams now have replicated what we call the search engine manipulation effect. So that's been replicated multiple times now. But all of this stuff, though, it's so inherently disturbing, which is kind of what you're getting at. You're saying, okay, this is disturbing and creepy and probably has a lot of implications for a lot of things, not just elections. Well, what next? Well, I struggle with all of these issues. I struggle just being aware of what I'm aware of. I mean, until a few minutes ago, you're the only person in the world, except for a couple of my staff, who knew that right now Google is sending out register to vote reminders to Democrats at about 2.5 times the rate they're sending those reminders to Republicans.
I've never received such a reminder, and I guess I would not be the target audience for such a reminder.
You're not the target audience. But what I'm saying is we're in an environment, this research environment, where not every single day, but very frequently, we're getting results on screens and we're going, what?
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. That is incredible. And I could entertain you for days, literally going through all the work we have in progress. We have 34 research projects in progress. We have, I think, 6 or 7 papers under review, 7 more papers being prepared. And this is all for scientific journals. In other words, this is not politics light.
Right.
This is serious science, adhering to very high standards. It's extremely difficult to publish in peer-reviewed journals, and we publish in some of the top journals in the world. It's very, very hard to do. So the problem here is what we're finding is disturbing and real and occurring on a massive scale, affecting more than 5 billion people around the world every day. Now what?